Emmanuel with us today. First of all, just a little bit like housekeeping issues, because we do this. Today's webinar is hosted by Stabgrad Shanghai, powered by Propeller, a strategic communication consultancy. But this is also in collaboration with our fellow chapters across the world, like Stabgrad Dubai, Stabgrad Bangkok, as well as Guangzhou, and chapters in states. Um, in Ecuador, etc. So it's actually like we have attendees from different systems, and in mainland China we are broadcasting this through WeChat channel, and in the other parts of the world we are doing this through YouTube. So for any one of you, if you want to engage with us, especially in the later on the fireside. For the Q&A session, if you want to raise any questions, you could leave your messages in the platforms that you are watching, and we will read through your comments and try to solve that as well. And for those of you who are just new to Stabgrad, basically we are the world's largest Stab community, and we operate in more than 600 cities across the world, and that really makes us as a global community, and as well as a global family for all the startups. And we cherish our community spirits. Basically, is the values is about helping others, giving first, as well as making friends. And this is also kind of make it as unique as possible in the whole ecosystem. And usually we host lots of fireside chats, especially in the offline settings. And today we are very happy and honored to have Emmanuel to join us here. Do you want to introduce yourself rather than?
Sure, yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm calling in from Paris. Was in China actually a month ago, but timing didn't work out. But usually based in the US, but currently in Paris for the summer, where I'm from. So my name is Emmanuel Straschnov, and I founded Bubble with Josh about 12 years ago now. So it's been a little bit of a while. Came to entrepreneurship and technology a little bit, not by accident, but it was not necessarily something I had planned when I started my career. In fact, I started my career in China. So I was in management consulting for a few years in Shanghai before going to business school. And back then, I didn't think, I would be writing code for a living. And 12 years later, well, that's what I don't write too much code anymore, but I've certainly wrote a lot of code over my career at Bubble. And what we do, so Bubble is a platform that lets people build applications. So today for the web, but very soon for mobile, actually. That's the next big push we're going to make without writing code. So today it's called as NoCode, but when we started back in 2012, we didn't have that name. But fundamentally, it's the same thing. This idea that, knowing how to code should not be necessary to create applications online, because software is everywhere, and it's important to enable people to do that with a more intuitive interface. So far, it's mostly been through a visual interface, like what we do, but we're starting to do stuff with artificial intelligence as well, where we let people describe in plain language, plain English, French, or Mandarin, what they want, so that we can accelerate the building process without writing code. And today we have about 150 people, mostly in the US, and we have users everywhere in the world, basically.
Awesome. As you've mentioned, back in the days that you guys started to do Bubble, the thing is, at that time it's still very early, but back then you already have this NoCode manifesto. And after 10 years, how do if you revisit your vision, is anything changed, or you kind of like upgraded it into a new level?
It hasn't changed too much, actually. It's still the fundamental thing. And by the way, I don't think we were that early. I think people have started thinking about the problem that of having people learn how to do things as early as in the 90s. Just happened that no one has solved the problem at that point. At least no one had solved the problem yet, and therefore people still had to learn how to code in school. The main changes, I would say, given what has been going on in the world over the last three years, 2 years maybe, is the impact of artificial intelligence, and the fact that it opens up, and it does for no code and bubble in particular, but it does, for pretty much everything. It does create a new way to interact with computers in a more natural way, with natural language, which you wouldn't have before. So I don't think it changes the goal at all. The goal is still to empower anyone, technical people and non-technical people, to do things, to create applications online and create software, because I think it's very important for most organizations, whether it's businesses, nonprofits, governments, even families. But there are certainly some changes that happened in terms of how we can enable people to do this with AI.
Got you. But in terms of, because back in the days that YouTube kind of, I heard it and I also read it from your blog that you guys bootstrapped for 7 years before you kind of raised the first round.
Yep.
Is that like in the between the years you definitely like some investors also like chase after you, but like you guys just declined it, or just you never thought about like you have the you don't think you have the needs to raise any fund before,
it's
before
never
that
that
point?
it's never that black and white, in a sense that we were not looking for money, so we didn't try to find funding. And at the same time, it's not so. And at the same time, we had some people that were excited to chat, but because we were not looking for money, we didn't go to the actual offer. We just get an offer, say, "Hey, sign here," then we decline them. Just happens that for the first 7 years, fundraising was not top of mind for us, and whenever we would have conversations with investors, we never felt like we met someone who were like, wow, that's really the person we want to work with and grow this business. And then that changed after a few years
Okay.
with when we raised money and say, after 7 years. I think the key thing here, and by the way, most of our peers, like companies that I would describe as building like a horizontal tool where you can do a lot of things and it takes some time to learn, have not raised money for a very long time. I think raising money is great if you're building something like Uber or Airbnb, where it's like a network effect and you need to go as fast as possible to acquire users and drivers, for instance, for Uber or Didi in China. That takes a lot of, or Xiaohongshu, these kind of companies, because it's a network business. You need to have a lot of funding. When you build a tool like ours, you need to really make sure the tool works great first before raising money. And adding more money to the mix doesn't mean you have a better product usually.
Got you. So do you mind like we also ask a little bit about like the product itself, like in your opinion, like what sets Bubble apart from other no-code platforms in the market?
Um, Two things. The first thing is, if you think about the spectrum, of how much customization you offer, and but how much you need to learn the product, and some products offer less customization and you have less learning. We're pretty opinionated that it's better to offer more customization and instead train and teach people how to use your product. So if I wanted to be at the very extreme end of the spectrum, which is not our side, like Wix is super easy to use. In 5 minutes you get a website, but you're not going to be able to customize a lot of things. Bubble is actually the opposite. It's going to take you a few hours to learn, depending on how you learn and how fast you are at learning. I've seen people go from like 2 hours to 20 hours. It can take some time, but 20 hours, then you get in a position that is very similar to code itself, like if you knew how to code. And that's what makes us different. Another thing that, another way to describe what makes Bubble different is that Bubble is probably the only no-code tool out there that is a programming language. You learn how to program, and if you don't program your applications in Bubble the right way, you're going to have bugs. And these bugs are not Bubble bugs; it's your bugs as a Bubble user. But the good thing of that means you can do pretty much anything at this point, which other tools don't allow. So this is the first thing. And then the second thing that we have is most platforms, and it was us until now, only focus on mobile or web, but don't do both. Uh, as soon as we release our mobile app builder, which going to be in beta probably before the end of the year, and then out of beta, like open to everyone early next year, will be the only platform that allows both web-based platforms and native applications, so iPhone and Android, all within the same system and the same backend capabilities.
Got you. Um, and I think like one of the very impressive things that happened is that like you have lots of champions from the community. And when we do this search like on LinkedIn or like other websites, it's very easy that you see some of our Bubble agencies, or like they are the Bubble ambassadors. So how much do you give the credit of success of Bubble today to your community itself?
I mean, a lot. It's difficult to give a percentage because it's not as simple to say, half of the success is from them. But what's certain is that it's been an incredible help since the beginning of the not bubble, because the community did not happen at first. It took a few years to get there, but we kind of started making a deliberate effort about developing the community in 2015, 2016. So it's been about 8 years now. And it's been one of our most effective ways to grow our user base. Just people being very active online and offline. Actually, we also see people doing meetups. Like there are a couple of things that happens in various cities where we see people gathering offline to just talk about bubble. And that has been an extremely efficient way for us to acquire new customers and new users. It's also something very valuable when you have a product again that is more powerful than other tools, meaning also you have to learn how to use it and you can make mistakes. Having a community is a very valuable thing because people can help each other and help debug each other. And in fact, some of the people you're mentioning as ambassadors, they're not just ambassadors. They usually, give classes, sometimes for free, sometimes for a fee, to train people to use Bubble the right way, because you can be a good Bubble user or less good Bubble user. And that's where the community is extremely important.
Cool. But in terms of like the community strategy, do you kind of like first design it from the not from day one, but like gradually you have kind of cultivate this strategy. But in terms of, because not only Barbara is doing community and other platforms or like other tools, they're also trying to do it, and some of them probably not as successful as you do. Do you have any like tips or anything around building up a community? Do you have any insights to share?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that for a couple of hours. Couple of things. I have a lot of people, reaching out to me, sometimes, friends of friends asking me, hey, I want to build a community for my product, my company. Can you help me? So the first thing I would ask them and tell them is that I don't think every product it works with a community works for every product. Like again, there are a couple of things that made it work for Bubble. I would summarize basically to two things. First of all, there is three things. First of all, the demographics we wanted to go for were people that wanted to gather the community. They were non-technical founders, and founders you enjoys hanging out with other founders because they all face similar problems, not exactly the same, but similar kind of problems. That's why startup grind exists. Like this is exactly the same thing. Like the Bubble community, in some ways, is a smaller communities than startup grind, right? But we share the same, pretty much the same mission, which is enable founders to gather to build their businesses together and support each other. So that was the first thing. So we tapped into a community that already exists. For instance, if you're building a product that is, a no-code tool for bakeries in France, I'm in Paris, I'm using bakeries. I'm not sure people that use bakeries identify as a community as much. So it's going to be harder to create a community from that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's a product that invites people to talk to each other because they need help. Like the way our community started is by starting this forum that still is there, forum.bubble.io. You can visit it today, where you see people asking themselves questions. Hey, I'm stuck. I don't know how to do this. Hey, do you think I should do it that way or that way? And these are pretty technical conversations, like within Bubble. It's like, software engineers, like coders asking themselves, hey, I need some help to debug this code. This is a fantastic way to get people to talk to each other. Some tools, not to over talk too much about Wix, but I don't think Wix has a very strong community because you don't need to talk to that much to other people to figure out, how to do things. Like you have a little bit of like education to do on the product side, but not as much as us because we're more complicated than Wix, to be simple. And then the last thing, which is related to the second thing, is pretty quickly what happens is people who have that knowledge, people that know how to use Bubble, are going to start being very vocal about their Bubble services because they make money out of this. And so then that's where you start getting into the blurry line between a community and ecosystem. And you have to be delicate here because you don't want to be everything about money and you don't want it to be too mercantile. But at the same time, if you start having people who make a living out of their Bubble services, they're going to be developing the community for you because it's just their way to make a living. And these three things putting together, are, I think, the raw ingredients you need to start the community. And then the question is, how do you do this? Um, it's a lot of little things. Try to being genuine. Don't be too corporate. Like a couple of things. The fact that it was, for instance, just we didn't raise money and the team was extremely small for the first 7 years, meant that a lot of our community efforts for the first 7 years were basically done mostly by me. This is as genuine as it gets because there's no corporate talk when you're the founder of a very small team talking to the community. That worked out well. It's not necessarily something that every company can replicate, because if you get bigger faster, which is probably a good thing, then you're not going to be able to do this with your own user base.
Got you. The thing is, I think because some of my folks, they are from the open source communities, and what I've observed is that if they are corporate, they actually if they are a corporate, they what they actually do is that they deploy lots of their stuff, and they, somehow it feels a little bit weird, or like the vibe is not as community as it gets. And if it is really like a small company, then what they are also like struggle to get their audience. And if they only have their full-time employees to do that, it is still like selling something. So that's why like I commented that it was very impressive for you to have that kind of like all those people are doing it voluntarily for you.
Yep.
Next question would be like um by the way, I'm trying to reserve the recording issue, but like let's just also continue this conversation. I was trying to also kind of learn from your latest insights in terms of what do you think are the trends in the no code and the low code development space, probably for the near 5 years.
I think two things. First of all, we have to, as an industry or as a field, I don't know if no code is an industry, but it's a field within technology. We have to mature our products and to make sure that people use us for production and not just for playing. For the first few years, people experiment with tools like this. I'm proud to say that a lot of Bubble users actually use us for serious things. These are not necessarily the people you hear the most about, because they usually start businesses and they're very busy building their companies and not talking about Bubble online. But we also, in general, like the no code in the no code field, has a lot of hobbyists and thinkers, and this is great because these are people that start a movement. But now it's about, we need to show that you can actually build real company and scale on top of Bubble. Like, one of the things we keep repeating internally and sometimes externally, but mostly internally, is we want to be the platform that enables startups to scale to IPO without engineers, and that takes a lot of work to do that. That's the main thing that I want our team to focus on for the next few years. The second thing, and I've already talked about that a little bit, is definitely the impact of artificial intelligence, how Gen AI changes a little bit, our options. I think there are fantastic things, fantastic opportunities ahead for no code and AI playing together. Um, AI is as good as the format it outputs. So AI generating code is great if you know how to code. But if AI generates something like Bubble or something no code, this is even better, because suddenly you have something that is much easier to modify for non-technical people. And I think we're only at the beginning of the integration. Like, we released something a few months ago, but I think there are many, many things we can do that will make the building process on Bubble, any no code in general, much more pleasant for our users, because it will be closer to their natural language.
Got you. um but the thing is like for no code, I think especially from the personal like just like us, like individuals who have no code, no tech background before, because like I also read from your website that you encourage people to be a programmer rather than just a coder.
Yeah.
What I mean is that like are you in any ways plan to educate people around to be how to do programming, not just like coding itself.
Well, so when I said that, and I wrote this, I think, in 2014, so it was probably 10 years ago now. What I meant is that I think it's a different skill set to know how to code or to know how to program. Programming means, building a product and building an application and thinking of all the different things that can happen and make sure that your product handles this well. While coding is literally, putting your hand on a keyboard, and your hands on a keyboard and type something that the computer understands. And what we're saying is that, for one coder in the world, you probably have like 50 to 100 programmers, because someone who uses Excel, for instance, can probably become a programmer if you teach them. And so, yes, to your question, our role with Bubble is to, first of all, let people know that they can be programmers, because I think a lot of people don't know that. And because they don't know that, they don't learn. And also accompany them to learn how to build products on our platform, on Bubble. The good thing with a product like ours is that you can get feedback much faster. It's much faster to build on, and so you can test things and play with, the end result of the application you've created much sooner, which will accelerate the learning process so that you can become, hopefully, a product expert slash, a programmer.
Got you. Um, but in terms of, I mean, throughout this process, is there any like I mean, you also face lots of challenges. Could you kind of like
Always.
can share share one of the biggest hurdle that you will come across, or like probably also failed to do so? Celebrating
I mean,
failure.
over 12 years, as you can imagine, there's going to be a lot of, challenges and failures. Well, I mean, I'll talk about the recent ones that we've had, where we've had stability challenges on the platform over the last few months. I mean, it's been better since June, but April and May were a little bit challenging for us, and this is coming from too much pressure on our servers. Like, one of the challenges that we have is that we enable people to do a lot of different things on the platform. We don't control everything that they're doing, and therefore sometimes they're going to do something that takes down our platform because they're going to put pressure in a way that we didn't plan well for. And so making sure that we remain stable, and that we keep improving things so that we don't have issues when people do aggressive things on the platform. And when I mean aggressive, I mean saying in a good way, like they're pushing the limits in a good way, is certainly one of the bigger challenges we've had to handle. um, the second thing, and that's more in the early years, but still today, is when you're in a field where a lot of people have basically made the promise that you're making, which is build things without code. It's not, again, as I said earlier, it's not new. People have started doing that, saying that they would deliver a product doing that, probably in the mid 90s. There is a lot of skepticism around the idea. Oh yeah, it's fun, you can play with it, but you can't build real things. It's something we used to hear a lot, right? And so the main challenge is, how do you change that narrative and tell them, no, this time it's different. This time it actually does work and you can do real things. That is probably the biggest challenge we've had to handle over the years. We're in a much better place today. I think that's definitely one thing where time helps, but it took some work to get there.
Got you. Um, is there any like exciting plans for Barber that you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I already have, in some ways. I think launching our mobile solution, like enabling people to build native mobile applications, like not just something hybrid, but something truly native for phones, whether it's Android or iPhones, is extremely exciting. I mean, the day Josh and I met for the first time and started brainstorming about the idea of Bubble, we were already thinking, okay, we need to do mobile one day, and it took a long time to go there, because I think the web is a pretty deep platform that you need to really be good on before expanding to other platforms. But that's something really exciting. That, plus keep pushing for the limits of what you can do with AI to make things a little bit easier to use.
Got you. Um, but if you, I mean, like, we've talked about the challenges, but in terms of what could be the most rewarding moment for you to, throughout the 12 years of journey?
It's gonna sound cheesy, but I do mean it though. I get regularly emails from people that telling me how much Bubble changed their life, because they didn't think they would be able to be developers, or to be able to launch a company, or to be able to build a product, and suddenly they were. And they describe their stories, and it goes from someone working in France for a non-profit to help single women, single mothers, to a 16-year-old kid in high school, not thinking that they would be able to get into technology and do that, to someone emailing me from Europe, but emailing me from South America saying, now I have a nomadic life, which I love, and I'm able to make money by building stuff for people, but I'm not an engineer, and I never thought it was possible. These are like, particularly heartwarming because ultimately that's why we do this. We're doing this company like this bubble exists because Josh and I shared the view that we want to remove limits for people. We want to remove, barriers to entry in technology. We think there are fantastic stuff to do in technology. I think it's very fun to be in that space, but currently only a very small part of the population can actually be an actor in technology and create new things or make a living, or it depends how you want to define being an actor. And we're doing that because we want to remove those barriers. And so whenever I get an email from someone telling me it did, well, that's a testament that, I didn't lose my time doing this.
Thank you. But I actually have a question, especially like for the youngest, like for the younger generation. It's like the world actually expect them to have success like from very early on, like or like just expect the quick win. But it's somehow like from based on your experience, it's like a very slowly, gradually find your passion, and you guys were very persistent and stick to the vision from early on and throughout all the process. What I would like to ask for the young generation is that against the backdrop of all those quick win or like all the other statements, they actually expect them to become another version or just like another bubble. But how in terms of from your view, what would you would like to share for to them, and also okay, just finish this one first.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm not sure, my personal history of being pretty slow, finding what I wanted to do. And then we had a slow start for the company, not slow in terms of product development, but in terms of scaling the business is necessarily the right thing for everyone. So I don't want to tell people slow down. The one thing I would say, and I don't think it matters whether you have quick wins or stuff like that, is especially early in your careers, ask yourself many times, like, do I like what I'm doing? How would I feel if I were not to do that job? And whether it's, it's a full-time job or starting a company or anything like that. And if you don't like it, then quit and find something else. You can't do that all the time. You can do that after a certain age because it's getting tougher sometimes to change. And sometimes you're going to have, family to support. You're going to have to make money to make sure your kids are fine. And there are a lot of things you do. But when you're young and single, the cost of switching is actually pretty low. And so I think it's very important to use that time when you can switch at a pretty low cost to make sure you find something you're truly excited about. Because if you want to be good at what you do, it has to be hard. Otherwise, no one in any way, if in business, in sports, like if you talk to the biggest champions in sports, I'm talking about sports because it's the Olympics in Paris right now, like, all of the champions would tell you, that their life is mostly made of pain and work and hard work. And so if you don't truly love what you do, at some point you're going to give up and then you're never going to be awesome at what you do. And so make sure to use the early years of your career to nail what you like doing. And in my case, it took some time. Like in my case, consulting was great for a few years, but it was not for me. It's not what I wanted to do. And then when I went to business school, I thought about doing a lot of different things, and it never felt completely right to me. And eventually, I found something that I'm excited about that I've been doing now for 12 years.
uh, Probably a hard question, but like I've wanted to ask you this for quite some time, because like on the one hand, you guys take it very slow. I mean, like slowly, as you were saying, also like trying to make sure that every decision, especially the strategic decisions that are right for everyone, because you guys are really like pouring your heart into the whole business. But then on the other hand, there are other versions or like other approach to doing this. It's like some of the other folks, they might just get their investment and fastly replicate your business model like anyone else, and they just like want to push it to the market. And then as long as they have the largest user base. They don't care about like the vision you've mentioned, or like the really thinking about from the humanity that grand level. For them, it's like the numbers, the markets. As long as they get that, that's fine. Do you think in the end, uh, which one will take over?
I don't think there's a conflict here. And to be very clear, I do care about market share. I do care about revenue and numbers. Our investors do as well. And we're
Sure.
pretty aligned here. I think it's important to remember the big mission that you have because it helps having a guiding principle when you have to make decisions. You know, if it turns out tomorrow that you can make more money baking bread than doing bubble, I won't do it because it's not the mission that we have. Maybe some people would decide to pivot and go to make baking bread, but this wouldn't fit our mission. But our mission will only work if we have hundreds of millions of users and if we have like massive scale. So it's actually pretty aligned here. So it's difficult for me to say, one is better than the other. To me, they just work hand in hand. I do think that it's worth having like a guiding principle and a mission because it helps explaining what you do better. It helps running the team better if you have a lot of people. I'm proud to say that our Bubble employees are not just here because they want to making money or create a big companies. They also want to make something useful for the world, and they believe in Bubble's mission. And when you have hard times, and you always have hard time as a company, it always happens from time to time. It is important to make sure that people that you have are with you for the right reason, and not just because they want to create like a big business and make money. Because if you get that, then people at some point will go to another companies that can make money. While if they care about the mission that you have, they'll stick around to make sure that it happens. But ultimately, we all want the same thing, which is a massive scale. Because if Bubble doesn't get enormous, I would personally consider have failed as a business, as a creator.
Okay, cool. That's all so far from my side, and I've actually we've actually have some questions on the message box.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna read it out. So Mark, our chapter director is from Fort Lauderdale. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it not correctly. So he's thanking you for taking the time to do this session and to hear you about integrating AI into Barbara platform. But his question is that um, they can already generate pretty impressive code with the ChatGPT. Are you concerned about whether AI will take over no code, will make no code redundant if people could just go to ChatGPT and produce the things that they generate?
Yeah, I think I've already kind of responded to that question, saying that ultimately AI is as good as what the format it outputs. Um, and so, if you're a coder, it's great to use ChatGPT to use code to generate code. I mean, I've used it myself, and it is indeed great. But if you don't know how to code, it's going to be more challenging. And so, if we are able to integrate AI fast enough, so that's the main thing, of course. Like if we fail at that, then yes, there is a risk. But if we can integrate AI to our product fast enough with high enough quality in terms of what it actually enables our users to do, I'm not too concerned of that because I don't think AI is going to change the fact that for one coder, you probably have like 1 or 2% of the world population that knows how to code, and therefore 1 or 2% of the world population that will use ChatGPT to write code that they can use. While instead, it's actually much more exciting to have ChatGPT generate a Bubble application that then you can use in our editor. And if you decide that either ChatGPT misunderstood or whatever AI you're using misunderstood that you wanted the button on the right instead of on the left, or you wanted blue but for some reason you decided to make it red, you don't need to go in the code to change that. You can just take your mouse and drag and drop it. I think that that's where there is an extremely exciting combo, which is a visual interface and drag and drop environment that we have, plus generating things automatically for people with Gen AI like ChatGPT does with code. Obviously, we need to make sure this is good enough to work. But if we are making this good enough, I am confident this will be seen better than ChatGPT generating code or other AI engines generating code by many orders of magnitude.
Got you. Hope that answers to Mark's question. And another one from
I mean,
Jason. So he's
the best way to answer smart questions though is to make sure we keep shipping good stuff, so that as he uses our AI assistant, I mean, it's a thing in our editor, and we keep improving what it does. Then Mark and or the people realize that, oh wow, it generates the application I want. I can tweak it and realize it's a much better experience than going to ChatGPT, type a prompt, have some code, copy paste it somewhere, deploy that to Amazon Web Services or Azure or another cloud provider to make sure the application runs and all those things. Like we offer everything. Like we run the application for you. If it crashes, it's our job to make sure it's getting back up. We need to keep doing that well enough to make sure that people see the value of AI plus Bubble and not AI plus code.
Arthur. Thanks for the answer. And I think we've got another one from Jason. So he's the first time like a barber, like to know barber, and he wants you to introduce one or two user cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 12 years and we have a few millions of applications which has been
The
created.
typical
So
ones.
it's I don't know what would be typical, but one example that comes to mind is it's actually in the AI space. So one of the interesting things that we're seeing is that people also use Bubble to generate AI startups, in a sense that startups that integrate with ChatGPT or other systems in a way that is different from other people, and therefore create a startup that is about AI, but they build it without code on Bubble. And so we have this company called Cactus.ai that has built um, something for students to leverage AI, as they do their work at school in particular, that has had like a tremendous growth in the United States. Like they've been able to have hundreds of thousands of users. They were able to actually become like quite viral on TikTok and other social platforms. And they've been growing their business. They've been raising significant amounts. I can't share the details because it's all private information, but it's in the multi-million-dollar range and beyond. And all of that basically without engineers. It's a very small team, very young and hungry team, out of school, 25-year-old or something, and they're able to generate, a significant business that now, they're developing even more through various things without engineers. And that's really what Bubble is for. Another use case, we see people building lifestyle businesses in Bubble. The case I'm using here is actually a venture-backed startup, like people that are extremely aggressive, that want to create something really big, and they can do that without hiring engineers, which not only is cheaper, because at some point, let's say you grow fast, you can raise money, but is much faster. Like one of the values of advantages of using something like Bubble is that you can get to market much faster, and when your users complain about something, you can change it much faster because it is much faster to tweak things in Bubble than to tweak things with code.
Understood. In terms, because like a Bubble is also like a global company, do you have ever have any plans to go enter the Asian market, or like how do you, or in your opinion, how do you see the Asian market, especially like China, as well as like the Middle East?
So today, I actually asked the team to look at that because I wanted to know the data point. I think we have paying customers in 100 countries of the world. Obviously, in some countries it's pretty small and it's only a few users, but in terms of how commercial operations, people finding the website and start building and then eventually paying Bubble with a credit card, we have that in 100 countries. Many of them in Asia, actually, and the Middle East. Like India is very strong for us. Hong Kong and Taiwan are pretty strong. Japan has a very strong community, mostly in Japanese, and so we don't necessarily see them as much on social platforms in English, but definitely very present. Indonesia, for some time, was one of our fastest growing countries. Not necessarily like they started from very low and they're not that big today in absolute terms, but in terms of growth, we had a few months where it was extremely fast. So we definitely, and in the Middle East, Dubai has always been pretty strong, a strong base for us. And from there, you have a lot of businesses that exist in other parts of the region. So we definitely have like a presence there. Whether we have like a physical presence and come in, it comes down really to do we want to start doing sales to big companies, which is something we're starting to experiment in the US and in Europe. So let us see how this works there. Our model so far is mostly self-serve. We don't necessarily need to be in those markets to have users because, again, if you see an ad on Google and if some friends tell you about it, you can go to bubble.io and just create an account. Now, for China specifically, People's Republic of China, this is a little bit more, the mainland is a little bit more challenging for technical reasons. To have our product that works well there, we would need to have like a local hosting and everything, which we currently don't really support. I mean, we have servers all around the world, but it's managed the same way because it's all on the same cloud provider like Amazon Web Services. And doing that in China would be a little bit more work. As I said, I started my career in China. My parents actually met in Beijing in the 70s, so there is something very important to me in making sure we are present in China at some point. It is a pretty important endeavor, and so for now, I think we're going to have to keep pushing on the current market and make sure we do well in the US, Europe, and other Asian countries before eventually, I hope so, enter China. But I would love to get more excuses, and reasons to go to China personally, like physically. And so at some point, having operations there would be very helpful.
How about the Middle East? You missed that part?
Middle East? No, I said, I mean, Dubai is a place where we have a lot of we have a lot of users actually. Many in Dubai, and that goes in the region. Saudi Arabia is booming for cloud services, and so we see some activities there. But again, for that specifically, I don't think we need to have like physical operations until we decide to sell to businesses, established businesses. For the startup community, you don't necessarily need to have an office in Riyadh to start selling to Saudi Arabia.
Got you. And when you were mentioning like using the word of users, they don't not necessarily have to be like a paid customer, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we have communities in the Middle East that are pretty active. Um, Same in Africa, actually. Um, and it doesn't matter whether they pay or not.
Okay. But like a kind of what is the strategy or what is the cue to convert them from a pure user to be a paid customer?
I mean, this works pretty well at this point. I mean, this is coming to if you want to remove the bubble branding on your application, if you want to have more usage, if you have more traffic, or if you want to use your own domain name, you're going to have to start paying.
You just nudge them to do that.
With that?
I mean, like you are kind of like putting some tricks to nudge them to
Yeah, I mean,
convert
I
to
wouldn't call
be
that tricks. I
yeah.
mean, it's a traditional freemium model. Like we're actually pretty generous on the free plan because I want people to learn how to use Bubble. I think it's important that people have the Bubble skill set, and so we don't put limitations that would prevent you from learning how to use a tool, but instead the limitation we have are about using your application at scale for in the real world.
Okay, cool, got you. So I will ask again, like in the baby system, and to see like whether they have more questions. But in the meantime, if you want to share anything else with us regarding the latest moves, I know like you have the Barbercon. Is
Yeah, we have
that like going to be September or October
October,
this year?
early October in New York. It's the second edition of our user conference. I mean, this goes a little bit to the community part and the ecosystem part. We've had requests from our users in our community to have a Bubble conference for a very, very long time. So we decided to do that for the first time last year. It's a lot of work to do that and to do that well. And the first edition was good. And so we're doing another one this year that's going to be bigger. Basically, every year you try to make a little bit bigger. The bigger you get, the more challenges you have to do. And so it's important not to go too fast. But I'm confident we can do something bigger and even better this year.
So it's actually like through the years, it's actually growing. Do
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
but
yeah.
okay, cool. Do you like after even for COVID, like after COVID, do you kind of continue anything else?
Well, the first user conference was last year, so it was way after COVID. And at this point, I think, knocking wood, COVID is behind us.
Okay, cool. Um, I don't think I've got like any response yet. Probably just chat for one more thing. I don't like apart from barber, do you have any other commitments at the for now, or you are trying to initiate your
Professionally, you mean?
yep.
Because no, I mean I'm very full time on Bubble. But I'm asking that because I have two young children, and that's certainly a biggest, very big tight commitment for me. But
Cool.
That's not business.
Sure. Being parents is the most difficult thing.
Yep.
One more second. I'm just gonna read through what's being discussed on WeChat.
Mhm.
Some of the folks are actually asking similar things about regarding like entering into the Chinese market, because as I was sharing before this session that there are definitely local players, but somehow like some of the folks they actually also do work as a bubble agency, so like they make money out of the platform, or like and also like contributing to it as well. But the thing is like because in China the cloud system is different from the rest of the world, and some of them are asking whether you would be interested in collaborating with like Ali, etc. To
One day again, when we're successful and big enough in the US and in Europe and other places of the world, then yes, we'll do that. It's just today we're pretty small. 150 people is not a ton of people. Setting up an entire new operation in China is something you don't want to do lightly. If we do that, I want to make sure we do that well and make sure that we allocate enough attention to that. But one day we'll do that. And yes, if we're in China, my guess is that it's likely would be something with Ali Cloud or Ali Yun or something like that.
Cool. One more thing. In your process to build Bubble from like a bootstrap it into a global company, what could be like the biggest tip, or like to continue to build it from a very small company to kind of like to this scale, to scale it to this stage?
Sorry, what's the question? Biggest tip? I mean,
Yeah, I mean like
I don't know.
from just a kind of a
I,
scale it to across the world. It's like a
yeah,
different
I,
territories have
yeah.
different rules and like
I don't
go-to-market
know if
strategies.
I don't know if I can say something different, honestly, from what people would say usually for that question. Like each scale is going to be different, and you need to make sure you have the right people for the right stage of the company, and that's totally fine. But some people are really, really good in the early stages, and less good when it's about scaling the business. And you have to be, and even yourself, I mean, I have to ask myself, am I the right person for the next 5 years, given that I was probably pretty good at my job in the last 5 years, or last 12 years at least, for sure, given where bubble is today. And so that's something that you need to really think about. One of the interesting things that I had to handle is the transition from being bootstrapped to venture backed. It does change a little bit the culture of the company, how we think about plans, goals, a lot of things, because before that you didn't have too much money and you just spend money you're making. Once you raise money from venture capitalists, that suddenly you have a significant amount of money that then you can allocate to invest in new ideas and new projects, and that changes a little bit of people. And it was a learning experience for me to make sure that we do that, that we have the right people to do that. Let's put it this way.
Gotcha. I think probably that's it.
Well, thank you very much for
Thanks
having me.
for tuning. Yeah, I think people are also like